Hello. Hello. Anyone around here speak basketball?
Paging Bobby Webster.
This is Adam Silver.
Vision 6-9. Welcome to the Confederacy of Dunks
Basketball
Podcast.
Podcast.
I am your host, Freddie Rivas. And who's, sir, looking good on the other end are you?
I'm your producer. I'm Matt Duncan. Freddie, you're back from Puerto Rico. You paid your respects to Raul Julia. And I think that's it. I think you got right back on the plane after that.
I did. Yeah, I just popped off, paid my respects. I saluted M. Bison, and I hit the road. But quick little Puerto Rico basketball thing. I walked by this beautiful court at one point in Old San Juan, and I found out later that it was there because Carmelo Anthony had funded it. So it's like I ended up seeing a lot of Carmelo Anthony jerseys in Puerto Rico, and I
cool.
assume that's why.
Is he Puerto Rican? Does he have any?
I know of.
I didn't know that.
But yeah. Also, Roberto Alomar, big deal. He's a big deal there.
Huge.
Yeah. If I wanted to make friends quickly, I'd be like Roberto Alomar, and I'd be like, okay, what's up?
Ricky Martin. Cheers.
Yeah. I didn't try that. Okay, let's jump right into some stuff.
Yeah.
But first, again, thanks everyone for coming to the show, listening to the show. We are Raptors and NBA show. We're hardcores. We're with Raptors Republic. And with that, there's a big event coming up. Maddie, if you want to plug it.
Yeah, we'll give a quick plug to the live podcast we've got coming up on February 7th at the legendary Rivoli on Queen Street West. Go to raptorsrepublic.com to get your tickets. $20, includes a drink. And there's the cast just keeps getting bigger. Listen, Fred, there hasn't been this much buzz around the Rivoli since like a group of guys started doing sketch in the 80s and called it Kids in the Hall.
Wow. Deep cut. I love it. Kids in the Hall. First place one of the first places I ever did sketch comedy as well. No big deal. But I'm excited about today's pod. I've been, we haven't been away, in the middle of a season like this. This is like one of the most intellectually wild Raptor seasons I can ever remember. So I'm very excited for these two guests. Let's go to you first, Jay. And I think this is almost a bit of a facetious question because it's a bit too simple, but I think it will be a good starting point here. For other conversation, should the Raptors bring back Poeltl in a Gary Trent Jr. trade?
I'll start by saying yes.
Okay,
it's not a hard yes. It's more of a soft yes, but a lot of it depends on what the package is going to include, right? Mm-hmm. So the scenario with Gary Trent Jr., if we remember how he arrived in a Raptors uniform, was kind of similar. Norm Powell was possibly going to be leaving in the summer for free, or not free, for nothing. So the Raptors were able to recoup and get Gary Trent Jr., a younger version of Norm Powell with better defense. And we have kind of reaped the rewards of that. And it's kind of a similar situation now where Gary Trent Jr. has kind of outplayed his current contract, which has a player option. He's definitely going to drop that. So you're back in that same scenario where you could possibly lose him for nothing in the summer, where he's going to command upwards of $25 million. Again, if you're of the belief that he should remain a Raptor and you think he will get that kind of money, then obviously you're not looking at trading him for Poeltl. But there are a lot of expensive contracts on their way. Specifically, Fred VanVleet is going to be up soon. Then you're talking about extensions for Pascal and OG and possibly, the rookie extension for Scotty. So the cap sheet's starting to get a little bit expensive up there. And the one name that's at the top of the casualty list is very likely Gary Trent Jr. So back to the original question. If you can get something for Gary, especially someone as good as Poeltl, I would do it. I understand that he is one of the only shooters left we have on this team. He is an instant offense, but at the same time, you got to look forward because this is already a lost season. You need to start looking at what the future can hold for this team. And if recouping him and getting back Poeltl, count me in.
Yeah, lots of interesting points, and I think the long-term aspect of it is where my mind is at. So, if you had asked me this in the beginning of the year, I'm kind of a hard no. I was like, hey, we don't necessarily need a center. We got Koloko. He's coming. We're training. We shouldn't be spending big money on the center position. Precious is potentially a rim protector. Maybe Barnes is kind of a center. A lot of that sort of, I guess, believing in Vision 6-9 more so as like a final product as opposed to this like asset accumulation thing. Now I think I am on the side of like my gut says Gary's career is going to be better than Poeltl's from this point forward. But also I think it comes down to who do you think you can resign and for what price? And also to me, it's an offense defense trade. We throw away our best shooter and we have kind of like a mobile big, but also I think, it's not a wild thing to say that you think you can probably get Poeltl for a cheaper price. What's interesting to me though, is that Norm was unrestricted. Gary was restricted. So when we made that trade, it was kind of like, okay, this is an asset control move. This trade, if it's just the two players, like you said, it's obviously rumors and not finalized. But if it's just the two players, Jakob's unrestricted. So I wonder, are you punting for security or are you actually like opening up a different kind of scary scenario? I don't want to take all the points away. So I'm sort of in the middle. Like I wouldn't be devastated by it, but I do think the cap sheet is growing. I'm not all the way on the lost season thing, but I do think that this group is too expensive potentially, or headed that way for how they're performing, right? You don't want to be all the way in the luxury and a super expensive team for a team that's really, is kind of struggling to be close to 500. Nigel, just take the basic question and then go, whatever way you want. The Gary Poeltl trade.
So number one, right off the get-go, we need a center. Big issue for the team is the POA defense, point of attack defense. By bringing that center, that eases that whole situation. And really, we've been playing a ton of minutes for Fred, and he doesn't need to play a lot of minutes. We need to ease that situation up by bringing the center. We can free up people like Malachi to play more minutes, people like Banton, people like Downton. I think Nurse will be happier with them behind him. By bringing a center, we also help simplify our defense. The amount of systems and structures underneath is just ridiculous right now. And it takes a lot of energy and it takes a constant coordination between the five guys. Any little thing is going to lead to big issues. Should allow more focus on offense as well. If we're simplifying that defense, it allows us to move away from that read and react, which hasn't been very effective currently. We can maybe put a little bit more structure into that offense, and hopefully that should facilitate better shot creation as well and leading to better shots, shooting splits. But I'm not sure Poeltl is the one. Apparently he's asking for $20 million for his next contract. Mm-hmm. If we're giving up Gary because of the fact that we don't have the financial flexibility to keep him, and then we had Poeltl at 20, doesn't really make sense from that point of view. Hopefully, I was hoping we get, if we were going to trade him, maybe some flexibility and a piece or two, either a draft pick and a piece. I don't know what you're going to get back for Gary at the moment. And the second issue for me is Poeltl works best as a connector. He's out there on the perimeter, setting screens, pick and rolls, doing all those things, which is also Scotty's best role, and he's been great at it lately.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the fit becomes less and less now, because let's face it, Scotty's the future. The more we can get him involved in the offense, the more we can put him out there and feel comfortable. The kid's got a great future, and I think we've got to explore that more.
Yeah, great point. So, I think the two I'll sort of like, open the floor up that I think are really interesting is kind of this idea of simplifying the defense. And, I brought it before. I think this would be an offense for defense trade. Our identity was supposed to be a defensive team. We'd be trading our very best shooter. And I'll get to the kind of the contract stuff in a sec, but yeah, Jacob, let me go back to you with that, with Nigel's point there. Well, what do you feel sort of about, like, do you think that Poeltl would add enough to this team's defense that we would kind of go back to our identity? Like, is he going to make it easier on Pascal, on, OG, on Scotty? Because, he's not like a shooter you can kick out to, right? Like, but he is a more traditional center.
Yeah, and I think that there's a way in which he benefits the team on both ends. Nigel touched on it a bit here, but there is a domino effect of having someone who can be your last line of defense. And I get that Precious Achua can provide that, but I can also see him as being that point of attack defender where waiting for you in the paint is Poeltl. So again, defensively, I see how he can kind of allow the other four on the defensive end to kind of do their thing and not expend as much energy, right?
Right.
And then, of course, the trickle effect of that is it possibly generates more transition opportunities for the number one transition offense in the NBA. That's
Right.
the defensive end. On the offensive end, I get the concern about losing Gary, as you both pointed out. He's probably the best shooter on this team, but the Raptors are, I believe they are number 7 or 8 in the NBA in shot quality, meaning that they're able to generate these open shots for everyone on the team. I get it. Gary's not on the team to make those shots, but you still have good quality shots that are being generated. That's going to get even better with Poeltl around to set those screens. So kind of going back to what the offseason will look like. A, you may lose Gary for nothing, and so you're looking for a shooter anyways. But B, the fact that you have this high shot quality means that it's just really a matter of those shots being knocked down. OG, Pascal, Fred, all of them are slowly starting to tick their numbers back up again. So I think that at the end of the day, this ends up being more of a positive for this team than a negative. And again, if we're going to talk about the cap sheet and the difference of, let's say, 20 for Poeltl and 25 for Gary, that's actually a big difference. That extra $5 million is enough of a difference for me that I would make a trade like this. Again, I think that this offseason, the Raptors will try to find more shooting. Again, we don't know the full details of what this trade could entail, but we also know that Doug McDermott is also a name that's rolling out there, right? So maybe he's included. I don't know, but I would still do this on because Jakob helps on both ends of the floor.
And I'll add to that. I think there's sort of this perception with Otto Porter that because he is injured and missing the season, it's sort of like the Raptors front office has purposely punted shooting, right? Of course he's had an injury history, but I think that they understand, at least to a certain degree, that they need shooting. So I can't imagine that they're like, oh well, we've lost Otto Porter, and we're gonna get Joe Wieskamp, sorry, and that's it. Like that's it. That's all we need. Like that to me doesn't really seem like, it seems like they're a bit out to lunch. And I don't feel like that front office is like that. So, any final points here, Nigel, before we move on to the next question?
Yeah, you know what? I think I really wish we'd taken that Speedy Claxton trade. We can finagle that somewhere. That would have been a nice little move for us. I don't know whether it was on the table or not, but what he's done this year is fantastic. I do think we need that mobile center. I don't know how we get it. I don't know how it's going to get done, but it's a priority for me.
Fair. I also love that you said Speedy Claxton.
Oh, what did I say?
Yeah, that's like for the NBA, for the old heads out there. Speedy Claxton, that's a real player, and Speedy Claxton was awesome. But
Didn't play center though.
He didn't play center, and he was speedy. Nick Claxton is fast too, though.
Yes, I hear that.
He's a mobile big. I know. Yeah, of course, one of the many guys that were, linked to the Raptors. Was that a real thing? Was it not? Those sort of the things we never get to know. And then adding to the confusion of everything is this idea, which I think is largely true, that the Raptors don't leak. So when you hear things, it's often other teams saying, I want this guy. But yeah, we're going to stick with you, Nigel. And we were talking a little bit before the podcast started about tanking. It's in the air. We are 6 games below 500. I am pretty firmly anti-tank in general, just as, for a variety of reasons. Anyone who's listened to this podcast before, I'm not going to go on a tirade about anti-tanking. Especially in a year where there's these major assets that a lot of people want. I get it. I get why people want to tank. Losing and being in the middle is rough. It sucks. So weave that into the, this question, however you like. The question is, have you seen enough of this iteration of this, the 2023 Raptors, with all the caveats included, Pascal, Precious, Porter, etc. Fred, have you seen enough of this team to make long-term conclusions about the core?
So, no, to be honest with you, there's just so many contradictory points. How we did well last year, second half, this second half, 2 totally different teams, and there's been a lot of different variables in there. I honestly think a lot of the minutes from last year are really affecting this current version. I think you see that a little bit. Siakam's an energy guy. He's not playing with as much energy as he was. You look at what's happened to Fred. And then we haven't even had Precious on there at all. He's just come back, and he's still not 100%. And he has already made a difference, I think, at this point. You can see that there's some chemistry out there that we missed. He's definitely a shot blocker that we haven't had before. It's also an incomplete roster. We've talked about the center's position. We've talked about the fact that Nick Nurse doesn't want to play his bench because he has no faith in them at this point. But is this core good enough to win a championship? That's the thing, right? You know what? You're really tied in after this. You're not getting if you're taking whoever. If you're going to go with Gary, or you're going to go with another center, or whatever you're doing with it. That financial flexibility, I know cap raises and whatever else, but we're really, really going to be tight to make any other little moves. I'm not sold on this core as is, but the X factor is obviously Scotty. How good can he be as that number 1, number 2 guy? We don't know yet. It's a huge thing. What was glimpses we see in the second half here of the last couple months, couple of weeks has been fantastic. The way he can. So he's a jack of all trades, and you can question his mastery, but you can't question his ability to affect winning. And he has been outstanding at this point as far as that goes. As far as tanking, I hate tanking. I hate the fact that we're playing a competitive sport, and all of a sudden you're trying to lose. It's like fixing games to me. Okay, I'm against it. But I understand the strategy of it. And for a team like ours who don't get free agents, and Victor Wembanyama is on the other end of that draft, and if there's anything that Masai likes, it's a freak. And is there any more freakiness than that guy? No. So he just changes everything. But if we're going to do it, I want a blitzkrieg. I forget the tanks. I want the Panzers. I want them rolling across Belgium into Paris. I want to have 3 picks in this lottery. Sell Siakam. Sell everything. I want get this done in 2 years, multiple picks over the next 2 years, and let's see what happens.
Lots of good points there. I also love that you went straight to just like war references. Forget the tank and just you went to another level. Also, if there's an easy title for this episode is it's Masai loves a good freak, which I think we know to be true. Shout out Bruno, but yeah. I think what's really interesting to me, before we go to Jay here, with this core, I off the top of your guys' heads, does anyone remember the game that Precious came back? Like, are we at like 6-7 games ish? Is that fair?
Yeah, something like that, right?
I'm just looking at like, I the Raptors have like not really lost by like there's the Atlanta loss I'm looking at. There's just a lot of close losses that time out with the return of Precious. And I think that back to Jay's point about Poeltl, there's a domino effect when you add talent on the court. And I think it's kind of hard to say the Precious domino, but maybe it's an injection of energy and athleticism, right? Like, there's so much unsolved with this core, and I think they're so young. And I think even if you're, hey, let's build around Scotty, you should ask yourself, okay, what's the ideal team around Scotty? Is it OG? Is it Pascal? Is it an aging Fred? What would you surround Scotty with to win a championship? Do you give Scotty a bunch of young players? I don't know, right? He's 21. So do you say, hey, Scotty, it's your team. I'm putting you in front of the Toronto media. Let's hope you don't crack. That's not my vibe. Like, I'm like, let's make sure this guy's in a good position to grow and become the superstar that we all think he can be. So that's my version of kind of like, even if we are saying like we're not contending, I think it's about putting Scotty in the play-in, putting Scotty in the 8th seed, whatever it is, putting Scotty in these high leverage positions, as opposed to saying, let's give Scotty a bunch of other, young guys, right? That are finding their way in the league. Like I want Scotty to be in, I've said this before in the podcast, but in a similar situation as Kawhi with the Spurs. Like I want him to be in a culture that's as strong as possible. That's why I said I wouldn't tank rant, but I ranted a bit. But yeah, I think there's so much that's strong with this core, and part of what's really Jay just said 12 games. So Precious has been back for 12 games. So if I look through the list, there's probably been some bad losses in there, but really, it does seem like as he scales up minute wise and, hopefully has the trust of Nurse, is a guy that can, fill in for OG in the starting lineup. He can do a lot. And is outside of Scotty, like I would say, probably has to be the number 2 prospect on this team, right? Like he's special, I think. Jay, again, I always feel bad when it's I talk a bunch after the first answer, but yeah, where are you at with this core? I guess with tanking in general as well, since we went there. Have you seen enough? Do you want to see more?
Yeah, a couple of things addressed, and both of you made very, very good points. First, I want to just define the core. So I think we all are in agreement that Scotty Barnes and Precious are part of that core. They're both young. They're both on rookie contracts. So let's just park them. We know they're part of the core. I would also add that Pascal is part of that core, because if we're thinking about who to surround Scotty with, sure, you want to surround him with scorers or shooters, but at the heart of it all, you have a top 15 player in Pascal. So for me, that is also part of the core. Yep. I would also add in OG to that core because, of course, he's like the premier 3-and-D guy in this league, someone that every single team should be trying to trade for, every single team. And he's on a team-friendly contract, at least for another year. So for me, he's also part of that untouchable, unless the rumors are true that teams are offering 3 first-round picks or whatever. So for me, those four are the core. The reason why I don't have Fred and Gary in that core is because both of them could technically just walk in the summer. So you
Right.
need to be a little bit more open-minded for these trade offers that come through. So
Right.
that's just more framing on who this core is. Now, when I think about if I've seen enough, I'm on the fence too. My initial answer was similar to Nigel, where it's like, no, I have not seen enough. I want to see more. Precious is working his way back. We're seeing the effect that he has. He's starting to look like that guy that we saw in the second half of last year. So I want to see more of that. On the flip side, I think, and maybe this is just me nitpicking on things that fit my narrative of always being glass half full. I think the Raptors are effectively tiptoeing the line between playing good and entertaining basketball and kind of tanking. Like, I know that I hear both of you saying tanking, no, shouldn't be doing it. It's a bad product. But what if I told you that the Raptors can give you the impression that they're good enough while kind of tanking? Like, let's just use the example of the Boston game, right?
That's not far-fetched.
They played well enough to win that Boston game. Then Nick Nurse was like, you know what? I'm going to call a timeout, even though we have a 4-on-1 break and could possibly take the lead. No. We're good enough to beat the Celtics. We've shown enough. Let's go lose now. Or it's, hey, we've got a 14-point lead with a couple minutes left against Timberwolves. Okay, you can take your foot off the gas now. So what I'm getting at is it's not as blatant as OKC Thunder were a couple years ago, where it's like, okay, let's just put Shea on the bench for the last 20 games. Good luck, OKC fans, trying to find something entertaining in that. It is, I'm going to play my guys. I'm going to even play my guys 40 minutes a game, give you a good product, but I'm going to do 40 minutes a game, even though I promised 30 minutes a game, because I want them to be a little tired in the fourth quarter. Of course, you're risking injury. And of course, I'm just talking out of my ass here. At the same time, this is what Masai has always been doing. Not the whole possibly tanking thing, but the tiptoeing the line between developing what he has and always being competitive. I think they're kind of doing that now, of tiptoeing between showing that they have a good product, a good core, and kind of just, okay, we're kind of cool with losing. And one final point on tanking. If you're uncomfortable with tanking, then maybe you can look at it differently and just cheer for the other teams to keep winning. So go Wizards, go Lakers, go Blazers. You've got new fans in me.
That's hilarious. And I think, that's a really good point, right? That in the infamous Tampa tank, right? We didn't really tank like other teams. Like, we stayed competitive. Of course, we shut down Kyle largely at the end of the season. Pascal got the shoulder injury. But we were, that was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was the year where the fake comeback got coined, right? Mm-hmm. Where we would blitz these teams at the end of the game and fight, right? It's like, it's a really good point, Jay, because I think it's sort of this mix, this balance of trying to hold on to a winning culture and acknowledging you're not where you need to be to contend. I also think that, I've said this before, but we're not the only franchise that does stuff like this. Like, obviously you're seeing San Antonio completely bottom out, but I remember at the beginning of the year, it's like, is Utah actually good? No, they're not. Is Indiana actually good? No, they're not, and they're not really trying to be. And both those teams are right around 500 now, and I would expect that they continue to lose a lot of games. But those franchises, there's a certain type of attitude, and I think the Raptors share this, which is, you can fight to keep the culture, and you can understand that the big prize, championship, playoff success, is not quite within your grasp. And to Nigel's point before, I think this team's also incomplete, and I feel like Bobby, I feel like Masai, and I feel like Nurse, they all know that. So that's woven into how we're operating right now. And yeah, it's a confusing year, because you see glimpses from a lot of players. I'm sort of in this territory where I really feel like this team is a house of cards that, we keep getting delicately set up, and it just takes one little thing, one timeout, one, this what blanking on his name, star guard for Minnesota, D'Angelo Russell. One rip through, like one thing can happen, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, no, like, this team is finding ways to lose. They're not really finding ways to win. But yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll say is I feel like there's a lot of recent chemistry between Fred and Scotty, which is very interesting to me. And kind of what I thought was going to happen. And it seems like there's been kind of like Team Scotty and Team Fred this year. And I think we've sort of forgotten that they're on the same team and they can really bring out a lot of the best in each other, which is kind of where the culture thing comes in.
Can I make a quick point on that?
Yeah,
on the
please.
Scotty thing. I mean, and I forgot which one of you raised it about. Maybe there's value in the Raptors at least getting some play-in reps and getting used to that high intensity, like clutch basketball.
Yes.
Scotty Barnes is, I think, number 3 in the NBA in fourth quarter scoring. So he's getting the clutch reps in game now. So that's, again, one of those things where it's like, they're tiptoeing the line of like, maybe we can generate that clutch intensity thing without actually being in the play-in. So again, it's really interesting to watch. And that Fred Scotty PNR is a part of that, right? So really interesting to watch. And so I'm basically saying, like, keep going, man. Keep going towards, winning 30 games, but somehow looking like a 50-win team.
And we're also seeing a lot of that chemistry develop as those roles are more defined.
Yeah.
And they're outside of each other's perimeter. They kind of have their own lane now. So that helps a lot. And I think that should maybe something that should have been done earlier, but you know what? Whatever, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think, the role definition of this team is sort of solidifying a bit, and it does seem like it's too late. I also wonder if, Masai and Bobby, they kind of have this attitude like, we go with the flow, and part of the flow of this season is, do you break your backs to get in the 8 seed or 9th seed or 10th seed? But conversely, do you break your backs to try and compete with teams that are just, losing harder than you? Like, you're not going to lose harder than the Pistons, the Spurs, or the Rockets. Like, you're not getting in those top 3. Maybe you get in the top 7, but maybe you're also okay with like a first round exit and drafting 11th overall, right? Maybe that's not the worst thing. Let's bring in Matty D, and we'll say a couple things. But first, I want to go to you, Nigel. Is there anything you want to plug? Anything you want to let people know?
So tomorrow I'm doing my first interview with a player, David Johnson, with the 905. Kind of looking at a young man struggling to achieve his dreams, how he's going to get there, what he's done in the past. So I'm really excited about that, and I'm really like to make sure you have a beer with you guys down at the Rivoli. Hope to see all of you. Jay, come on down. Freddie. Yeah, Matty D, of course. I know Matty's buying, so we got to do this. Okay,
yeah, Matty's buying, baby. Big money, Matty. Wow, I mean, I'm excited for that David Johnson article, and thank you so much for joining, Nigel.
Oh, thank you very much.
We'll make sure to plug your socials, but yeah, everyone check out Nigel. And Jay, what's up? What do you want to plug?
Oh, you got that mute going. Oh, there you go.
Playing with the mute button. No, you can find all my work on Raptors HQ. We are part of SB Nation, if you caught word of Vox Media making a bunch of cuts. Our podcast was one of those cuts, but the good news is that our podcast is not going anywhere. Yes, we will no longer be on Raptors HQ, but you can still follow That's Rap Pod, and we're still going to keep going, even if we're not on SB Nation. So you can catch us there. We record every Friday. But yeah, you can also catch my weekly article, the Wrap Up, which looks at the games of the week for the Raptors, and that comes out every Monday. Actually, this week's just came out today, so make sure you check it out.
Yeah, check it out. Sorry to hear that, but also I'm glad you're keeping on because hey, that's what it's about. Maddie D, I'll let you kind of finish with the plugs here.
Yeah.
But first, I just want to say, thanks for everyone for all the support. We're back to going weekly here on the pod. And when I was in Puerto Rico, I made sure to get Matt something. We all know his favorite film. He watches it every day. So I got him a Toon Squad hat. I'll be giving him the Toon Squad hat.
Wow.
Anything you ever wonder about Space Jam, you can ask him. He watches it every day. Matty D, I'll let you take it away here.
Oh, wow. I did not see that coming. It's inching me a little closer to finishing that movie for the first time. I don't want to get your hopes up, though.
Yeah, you need the hat.
But can't wait. And I will say thanks for listening to the podcast. If you were listening on the podcatchers, great. If you watched us on YouTube and saw the couple segments we put on, please go to the podcatchers. You can listen to the full episode there. Make sure you go to raptorsrepublic.com. That's where you can listen to us and you can read all the great articles as well as pay for the paywall to get the more premium articles and stuff that are written by our great writers. I'll say it again. We do have the live show coming up on the 7th, and that is 2 days before the trade deadline. So there'll be a lot of speculation and fun talk and great basketball minds. So yeah, make sure you check it out. And thanks again.
Amazing. Thanks so much, everyone. And Matty D, if you feel like we're done, we're good to go, please just give me those words I love so much. Okay.
Listen to full episodes of the Confederacy of Dunks only on the Rapcast.